Had so many of you moms reach out to me this week and ask, what is the difference between being a leader, being in authority, and just like controlling and managing my children? And I feel like that's an extremely valid conversation to have because I believe in empowering and equipping the mom to have a certain framework. And so if you're a mom that goes to bed at night and you're just exhausted and you feel like your days are just out of control and you don't quite even know how to manage your children or what to do, and you just are starting to feel overwhelmed and burnt out and like nothing's sticking, then I hope that you will be encouraged and inspired by the end of this video. I'm actually going to talk about the difference between authority and control, and how when you understand this difference, it will honestly change the way that you parent, the way that you mother. And I'm going to give you in just a little bit, I have some notes with me because I want to make sure I'm giving you guys the best that you can walk away just really, truly feeling like you can be empowered to learn. So I'm going to give you a one sentence that shifted my mindset and I believe will shift yours in just a little bit. Before we get started, if you are someone that repeats yourself often or maybe has a hard time with maybe feeling like you're controlling your children or like your authority feels a little like uncertain, just comment yes in the comments below. Let me know. And if you're live, say hello. If you're on replay, I'll put all the timestamps here for you at the end. But I want to go ahead and get started. So if you're repeating yourself literally over and over, nothing is working, your kids are not really obeying, and you're just having a hard time like trying to get them kind of under control, I want to bring a couple clarity to you, a couple things of clarity. So I have an ebook that I launched called Raising Little Disciples, and the first part, it talks about God anointing you and appointing you in the ministry of motherhood. And oh, good morning. And I talk a lot about the calling of motherhood and mama as a disciple first, and how the position of a mother is a God-appointed position. And I believe that's something that we need to understand, is that authority is a God-given position. It's not a personality trait. It's not like, oh, I'm not extroverted, I'm not loud, I'm not bold, so I'm not really a good authority or a good leader. It has nothing to do with you, and it has everything to do with just the placement of where God has you. It's really rooted in like a long-term formation, a long-term positioning. Versus control, on the other hand, is very short-term. It's very emotional based. A lot of it is rooted in our fear, our pride, our loss of control. So when we feel out of control, we feel like we need to control. And then, of course, we try to bring in behavior management, right? Like we have all the timers and the tools and the little cards. And those are just tools to support the child. But when we rely so heavily on these kind of like behavior management tools, we don't actually change the heart of the child or even stir obedience in them. It's just very short term. And so that's the two biggest differences between authority and control if you're just hopping on. And I talk a lot about this in regard to, you know, as leaders in the home, as the authority. And I'm going to actually give you practical examples in just a minute. And I'm going to walk you through a couple scenarios because I want you to hear the difference between what is controlling and what is a leader. And I encourage you, if you're spending time with Jesus, study what is a leader? Like, what is a biblical leader? What does that look like? Because sometimes as moms, we might feel bad to be like firm or, you know, to command something because we feel like that's like maybe harsh. And then we start getting passive. And, you know, there's this little wrestle, especially because we can feel more discerning and more emotional. But it has nothing to do with what we feel or our opinion about our leadership, and has everything to do with what God is calling us to in the raising up of our children and raising up our next generation ahead of us. And so I encourage you to study what is a leader. And I'm thinking of the scripture. I didn't have this in my notes, but I'm thinking of that scripture about the centurion. He basically, you know, he has a sick servant, and he hears that Jesus is in town, and Jesus is coming, you know, he's doing a lot of healing and a lot of miraculous things. And the centurion says, "Hey, you don't even have to come into my house. You don't even have to come under my roof. Like, I am a man of under authority. Just say the word, and I know my servant will be healed." And like Jesus commended him, like, I've never found such faith, you know, like he had such revelation of what it meant to be a leader, where he basically said the leadership and the authority is in the power of your words, because Jesus is submitted to God. And just like the centurion had people under him submitted to him, like whatever he said was accomplished. And so as leaders, I just want to really hone this in before I get practical with you guys. As leaders, as we are submitted to Christ and as we are submitted to our church leadership, our husbands, our just the people in our life that we're to be submitted to, that we have authority in the way that we speak. And so it doesn't look like volume. It doesn't have to look like yelling. It doesn't even have to look like control or force. Like if I'm forcing my child, like pinning him down to the ground to brush his teeth, that's not obedience, nor is that leadership. Leadership should be kind. It should be loving. It should be calm and firm. But I don't have to lose my like sense of this is what I require and I expect that it's accomplished, I guess, mindset in it. And so anyways, I talk a lot about that in my ebook, and I'll post the link below. It's it just breaks down a lot of like just the leadership of a mom and the ministry of motherhood, and then mom as a disciple first, because we can't lead our children where we're not willing to go. And so and also I want to ask you, if you find yourself having a hard time with your children listening to you and obeying you, and you're doing everything right, maybe you're taking these skills that you're learning or these guides that you're learning or scripts, I want to encourage you, like, are you submitted to the leadership in your life? Because if we're not under authority, we won't be able to have authority. And so if I expect my children to obey me, but then I'm living in sin towards the things that God is calling me to, or maybe towards my husband, maybe disrespectful or whatever, then I won't have that same sort of like power in my words and in my follow through. And so that's just a little bit of a side note. Anyway, so I want to move on. I want to get practical because I know this is just like the concept of the frame of a leader versus the control. Because authority is all about forming the heart. Oh, I'm so glad you love the ebook. Thank you. I'm going to talk about the ebook at the end too. I'm actually expanding it into a full curriculum and workbook, and it's going to be so good. But authority forms the heart versus control is just about the behavior. And you will notice that as a mom. I want to, actually, let's pause. So I want to show you what this actually sounds like in real life. And if this sounds like you, please comment below. Let me know if you're like, which one you kind of lean towards. Because I want to show you two versions of the same exact situation, but I want you to hear the difference. And so let's ask, so I'm going to go in the topic of role playing. I talked about this on my Instagram a lot. If you don't follow me, I'll post the link below. But I talk a lot about this, about the power of role playing and practicing obedience through play first before you actually have to like have it in real life. So we're gonna use our example number 1, which is asking a child to clean up, because that's a pretty common thing. I'm pretty sure every day you're asking your child to clean up. Okay, so we're asking our child to clean up. So somebody that struggles with control, and if this is you, maybe comment below control or comment leader. Somebody that struggles with control would say something like, I already told you 1,000,000 times, or stop doing that. You need to clean up right now. If you don't clean up, then blank. How many times have I told, are you still that you can hear that kind of tone, right? And that might work temporarily, right? Like you might have your tone and your anger and like maybe a fear aspect. And so your child will be like, oh, and they'll, respond. Versus the authority version or the leadership version would be something like, I love you too much to allow you to disobey mommy. Go ahead and clean up, or there will be a consequence. Or, you can word it like, obviously you'll have your own script for your own home, but something I do often with cleanup is, you're welcome to keep the toys that you clean, or mommy will keep the toys. What do I usually say? Oh, you're welcome to keep the toys that you clean. Otherwise, mommy is happy to take them from your hands. And what that is communicating is that whatever you clean up, you're in charge of, it's yours, you keep. If mommy cleans it though, it's going to toy jail, and then you will have to earn those things back. Anyway, so there's a little bit of a difference there, okay? So again, control is about pressuring the moment, pressuring the child, expecting them to do something, versus authority is just leading, right? It's not telling you what you're going to do. It's telling the child, this is what mommy's going to do. And you are welcome to choose to obey or disobey, but there will be a consequence regardless. Or, if there's a disobedience. And I want to hone this in real quick on a side note, because God, like literally is a perfect God, right? God is perfect. And yet he allowed Adam and Eve full control to make their own choices, right? He didn't say, like, don't do this and try to like keep them from the tree, he basically said, hey, all of this is free. You're free to do all that you want. However, don't eat from this tree. Otherwise, like, it will bring death. Like there is like a love and a heart of a father to want to lead his children into freedom, but we can't like force their hand and be like, hey, watch out, watch out, watch out, because we can't do that. We just realistically can never do that. And Adam and Eve chose sin. They chose disobedience in the midst of having a completely perfect family, perfect dad, perfect Eden. And so that I think that we need to like free ourselves from that pressure of like, we are trying the best we can as parents. None of us are perfect. We're all in process. But I cannot force my child into perfection, because even a perfect father can't do that to his children. Like, we allow them the freedom to make mistakes, but the cost of these mistakes do go up every single day. And so if I'm allowing disobedience and rebellion to slide when they're 3, 4, 5 years old, hey Amber, then it will only get more severe when the child is 11, 12, 13. And I think this is why parents struggle so much with the teenage years, is because all of a sudden they want to become the police when they should have really been addressing a lot of these disobedience and patterns of sin and flaws when they're 3, 4, 5. Anyway, so example number 2, second role play. And I'm going to go through exact role plays in just a minute. I'm just giving you like really brief examples before we dive in. And feel free to ask questions. I'll answer them at the end if we'll have some time. But second example, a meltdown or a tantrum, right? So a controlling version, and if you're just hopping on, we're talking about control versus authority. A controlling version would be something like, stop crying, get yourself together, stop being so loud, go to your room. Like, it's just very orders and very driven by our fear, our discomfort, just our lack of like able to control them, right? Versus the authority version, or being a leader, you would be able to remain in a calm position regardless if your child is emotionally not calm. And you can say something along the lines of, I see that you're overwhelmed, I see that you're frustrated, I see that you're blank. Would you like mommy to pray with you, or do you need to spend some time alone in your room? And again, this goes back to reiterating, like, I'm in control of what I do, and I cannot control you. And we say this often in our home. We say, like, you are only in control of you. You can only manage you. You cannot control anyone else. And so as a mom, I cannot control my children without there being some sort of without there being some sort of wounding to their heart. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I can control them and be like, get yourself together, or stop crying, or I'm going to do this to you. And I can release that kind of fear and pressure, but their heart will remain unchanged, and obedience will not be produced. Like, the fruit of godliness will not be produced. And so if you are here and you're like listening to these examples, comment below if you're hearing the difference, because I want to make sure I'm making it really clear, like, what controlling behavior sounds like versus what like a leadership or authority sounds like. So if it's clear, just thumbs up or let me know. Okay, so what I mentioned earlier when we first started, I said there was this one sentence that really shifted my mindset for me. And this one sentence for me is, if I have to force something, then I am most likely have already stepped outside of authority. So if I am forcing, controlling, making something happen, then that is not authority. That is not leadership. And I believe there's a book, if you guys haven't heard of this, it's called Loving Our Kids on Purpose by Danny Silk. And I'll post the link below. Again, I have a little, like, a whole book list of motherhood books and children's books. But he talks so much about this power of control and the power of fear, and how often we try to live like police officers, where we're just like instilling fear and we're not always following through. And so it's confusing to our children and it wounds their spirit. Okay, so I want to move on to role play. Okay, so So when it comes to role playing, something that we do often in our home is we will practice role playing basically everything in our life. And so if I am going to the grocery store, if I am going to church, if I'm going to a restaurant, if I'm going to a friend's house, if I'm getting in the car, going to the park, I mean, regardless, like, I encourage you, like, take a week and just write down, what does your life actually consist of? And then create scenarios where you actually practice those things, because your children learn so much through play. And so I can say a lot of words, you know, I can like say, hey guys, we're going to be kind, we're going to be sweet, hey, we're not going to touch things on the shelves. But that kind of goes out their ear when they're really in the moment of like the heated emotional excitement of it. Versus when they're doing role play, it becomes so repetitive that it actually becomes a habit. And so you learn how they function in their role play so that you can practice that in real life. So, for example, if I'm going to the store, let's just say, I will create scenarios at my home. So we have like a little grocery cart, we have little baskets, and I'll be like, all right, guys, we're going to the store. Let's pretend we're going to the store. Can you find some bananas? And, they'll walk around the kitchen and look for bananas. And I mean, it's super fun, right? And then we'll practice these scenarios. And so then I'll say, oh, guys, mommy got a phone call. We need to step out of the store for a second. Drop what you're doing. Let's leave. And they'll drop what they're doing and we leave. And so I'm creating these scenarios of like what would potentially happen that I need my children to respond and obey promptly. Other times I will actually go to a grocery store without the need of buying anything. Like I don't go and try to get like 2 weeks of groceries during a role play scenario. But I won't necessarily tell my children, like, hey, I'm not actually buying anything, I'm just testing you. But I might go just like, hey, mommy wants to go get a treat. Let's go to the grocery store. And then I have them practice. And so something I do is if my son specifically is touching everything on the aisle, because they're curious, whatever, I will actually say, all right, hands in your pocket. And his hands go in his pocket. Sometimes, he'll try to get sneaky and like try to push his hands out of his pocket to like still touch. And so there's different scenarios that you're like, okay, I can see that this is a obedience heart issue. And this is something I need to practice versus there's a curiosity, there's a play versus like there's an obedience. So I create these scenarios. Another thing I do is with restaurants, we will practice at home, like sitting on our bottom, not reaching over other people, not yelling or bouncing around or whatever. And then we will go to Chick-fil-A or wherever, and we will actually practice these scenarios. Now, if the child is misbehaving during these role play scenarios, because it's a role play scenario, we will actually go ahead and just stop what we're doing and we will leave. And I really reiterate, like everything that we do in practice is training, like discipleship, we're training, right? Like this is all about like heart formation and building character and building habits. And so in the moment, I'm more likely to just respond in that controlling pressure, burnout mom mode if I don't already have some sort of practice scenarios going on. And so I really like encourage every mom, like seriously, like just take one thing that maybe you have a hard time with and practice at home. So a couple examples, and I have this as my as I'm expanding my ebook, I wrote it in there. Sibling rivalry, going to the park, play dates, getting bullied, going to the library. Like I will actually get on the floor with my husband and I'll like have, we'll pretend that like he's like stealing a toy from me or bullying me. And then I'll like start kicking my feet and be like, ah, and we'll say, is this how we respond? What could mommy do if mommy is really hurt and upset? What could mommy do to respond to a bully? Or what if someone's stealing mommy's toys? Like, how can I respond? Or, hey, you built all these towers and they just got kicked by a kid. Like, should I kick the kid back because I'm so angry at him? Or what should mommy do? And like, I'm allowing my children to see from a different lens. And more times than not, they'll surprise you because they'll say, no, mommy, that's not how we behave. We just say, it's okay, I forgive you. And then, but if the response isn't what you had hoped it would be, that's a great time to practice. Okay, so you want to kick this kid. Would that be a blessing to that child or would that hurt the child? And then you now allow them to form their way of thinking because as moms, like we can lead our children into the way that they think. We can form the way that their brain is processing. And I don't know, like comment below if you're someone that had to kind of like figure out how to parent yourself when you became a parent or when you became an adult, like learning how to like just take a breath when you're angry or not react. For me, I had like none of these skills growing up. Like a very unhealthy adult. And I suffered through most of my 20s because I didn't know how to think and process through difficult things. And so now that my children, they're about to be 2 and they're 4, I'm seeing behavior in them that I'm like, wow, that's so healthy. I don't like, that's something I just learned late 20s, like the other day I have an example. My husband came home from work and he was really grumpy. And he was being like, just mean to me and the kids and just being grumpy. Well, when he woke up, my 4-year-old said, Daddy, I know why you were being so grumpy this morning. It's because you're tired, Daddy. You need to go get some sleep. And then, of course, my husband, he apologized to us and he said, hey, I'm sorry, there's no way to respond, even if I'm angry or, tired. But just to have my child process that, like, oh, if someone is reacting and it's not their normal, then something's going on. Maybe they're tired, maybe they're hungry. Like, there's different layers, versus it being like, what did I do? I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? My dad hates me. Like those thoughts that I remember growing up with. And so anyways, role playing, that's so, so powerful. And I encourage you to even like, it's hard, it can feel really awkward at first. And so I want to encourage you that it might feel awkward. But I encourage you, like, write down, maybe go through my ebook if you have it and write down the scripts. Or, find your own scripts through the Bible or through different places. Oh, there's also an app. It's called Wise Words. It's by Ginger Hubbard. I think it's like a $3 app or something. But she has a list of like fear, deceit, anger, lying. And there's this whole list of emotions and what to say. Are you being truthful? Are you being dishonest? Are you obeying mommy or disobeying? It's a really great script to practice. So you can even pull from like resources like that. I mean, there's so many things available. But yeah, or write your own. And then when you're role playing, create these conversations in your children. And so anyways, I don't know, if you guys have any questions, let me know. If there's a role play you want specifically, we can go through. Comment below. Otherwise, I want to just hone in, like, this week, find where you are operating in that spirit of control. Find where you are operating with fear. Sometimes, if our children are being disrespectful to us, like, we might not admit it, but there's a fear of like, why is my child, like, did I do something? Or it can feel really personal. Maybe your child will say something like, I hate you, mom. And it can feel like it's so personal, instead of it being like a heart formation, like a disobedience issue, or like, because we're not like, and I see this a lot on like Instagram, like everything's like really honed in on the obedience and behaviors. And I just don't think that's the end goal, because God is after the wholehearted child, right? Body, soul, spirit, mind. He's after all of us. And so he doesn't just want external behavior without the internal heart change. Like, he doesn't want just our kids to sit still and be perfect and do perfect things while their hearts are wrapped up in anger and bitterness and rebellion, although it's like hidden, And that's why when these things surface in our children, I tell moms a lot of times, I'll say, it is mercy. It is mercy that these things are surfacing, because God is allowing you to see what is actually happening so that you can lead them into truth, so that you can lead them into the gospel, so that you can lead them into the character of Jesus. And so when my child freaks out or falls apart or is very disrespectful or has huge anger fits or whatever, I don't necessarily walk away saying, oh my gosh, I'm so concerned, I'm so worried, like, what's wrong with him? What I'm walking away with is, Lord, are there open doors in my home to darkness, to sin? Have me or my husband let something in? Okay, maybe, okay, we haven't, okay. Lord, is there something going on in my child's heart? How can I pray? How can I steward this moment? And then I spend those next few days, 2 weeks, honing in, like my devotionals, my prayer times is about teaching. Whatever the problem is that my child is going through, I'm teaching the opposite. Okay, this is how we serve. This is how we submit. This is how we love. And I'm going through those in practical, biblical, and role play scenarios. Because our control will often come from us feeling, like I said, like just that fear of failure, or feeling embarrassed, or feeling out of control, so then we try to, like, hey, you're making me uncomfortable, stop doing what you're doing right now. Instead of, like I said, letting it be heart formation, letting it be an inward, like, conviction and a change that happens through this kind of heart training. And that takes time, so I want to encourage you, like, I've had so many of you moms, which thank you so much. I've had so many of you message me privately or even comment saying, I have been practicing things from your ebook and I'm seeing things change. I'm seeing fruit in my child. I'm seeing more peace in myself. And I'm seeing these kind of like feedback, and I love that. But I've also seen some feedback of like, I'm still struggling with anger. What can I do? And I just always encourage that mom, like, it takes time. It's a process. Like, our entire lives, we are learning how to be more like Jesus. We are learning how to live like like him and become like him. And it's a process, right? And so I've been a Christian for, I don't know, 15 years, 20 years maybe. And I'm still, there are so many areas of weaknesses in me that I'm like, it's been so long. Why do I still struggle with these same things? So how much more are littles, 2, 3, 5, 7 years old? Like, of course, they're in process and they're not even really walking with the Lord yet. And so really what we're doing is creating like a foundational framework for them so that when they do encounter Jesus, they already have a really great start, And so lastly, before we close, I think we're 25 minutes in, something I want to have you walk away with, because I believe in empowering the mom to be a disciple and for you to disciple your children, these are good questions to ask yourself. So I'm going to put timestamps at the end, so if you're not taking notes or whatever, that's totally fine. But authority will ask, what does my child need to learn? What skill is missing? How do I model this? And so that's kind of the framework of the question, like as a leader, you're asking. Versus a controlling, the struggle of controlling would ask, how do I make this stop right now? How do I look right now? And if you've ever had a grocery store tantrum, y'all know. Comment yes if you've ever had a grocery store tantrum. Those things can be so embarrassing, where you're like, everyone's judging me, everyone's looking at me, this is so embarrassing. And that's that heart of control of like, stop it right now, stop it right now. But if we were to be practicing godly and biblical leadership in our motherhood, we wouldn't even worry about ourselves as much as we would, my child right now is under attack. He is under like an inability to practice self-control, and I need to help guide him and lead him. And that's when I would ask my child, can you settle down, or does mommy need to take you to the car? Or can you practice self-control, or does mommy need to take you home? Because it's more important that I'm training my child than I'm trying to carry on with my own tasks, and I'm missing the moment. And obviously, there's a time and place for everything, right? Like sometimes if I'm driving an hour to Costco or something, I'm not going to drop my groceries to take my child home. Like there are scenarios where sometimes there is a grace, and sometimes there's we will deal with this when we get home, because this is unacceptable and I don't want to see this happen again. But that again goes to the role playing and goes to those training. And so anyways, to encourage you, it takes time. So don't feel like you're a failure, or if you're just now starting out, don't beat yourself up for things if you repeat yourself, or if that growth is slow, or if you do find yourself controlling and then being like, oh my gosh, I control my children, I say stop, or I say do this now, or whatever. And so I have a little quote here: authority doesn't rush, control panics. When fear is loud, authority gets quiet. And if peace disappears, control has taken over. And so anyways, I want to go ahead and end this live. If any of you guys have any questions, you can ask away. And I'll post my ebook below if anybody wants to kind of check that out a little further. But yeah, I encourage you this week, as you're walking away, I want you to practice that mindset of if I'm forcing behavior or causing pressure, then I'm stepping outside the role of leadership. And I want you to practice that when there's a disobedience or a sin or whatever is taking place. I want you to start like thinking to yourself, how do I tend to my child's heart right now, and not just stop and like manage the behavior and force it to end as soon as possible. And it's totally okay to tell your child, would you like to blank, or do you need some time to go to your room? It's okay to buy time. Like if if everything fails, buy yourself time, right? Otherwise you'll get triggered, you'll get angry. So buy yourself time and think, okay, mommy's gonna step away for a minute. I need to spend some time with Jesus and ask him what the consequence is. Or whatever you need to be to let your child know that mommy is under the authority of God, and I don't parent alone. So I don't have to force anything to happen right this moment. There is no rush, there's no pressure. I can take time and you can take time. So take your time. And so anyways, I hope this was helpful to you. I want to cap this at 30 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and put an end to it. But yes, so role playing, practice that. And if you do any of these things, please come back to this live and comment below what you've tried or what you've done. Or even if you need some help, we can go through that together. Otherwise, I hope you ladies have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining in live, and hopefully I will see you guys next Saturday at 9:30. All right, bye.